Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we'll go right into the share here. And all right, you should be able to see this. Let's find I need to go back to where we left off. All right. So we're actually Ela Ha'edut. So this is the sort of, we finished Moses's first of those three speeches, and so we have this introduction to the second of his speeches. Ela Ha'edot v'hachukim v'hamishpatim. This is these are the legislation, the decrees, and the laws. Asher diber Moshe el bnei Israel, which Moses spoke to the children of Israel, to the Israelites, B'tzeitam mimitzrayim, when they left Egypt. And so when they left Egypt, it sounds like it's contradicting what we had said before, that these speeches were given, right, essentially a month before Moses passed away. And so what is this meaning? So Rashi is telling us, Ele ha'edut, this is the legislation, etc., Asher diber, which he spoke. Well, yes, that's true. Haim asher diber b'tzeitam mitzrayim. Yes, those particular laws and statutes, etc., which he told them when they came out of Egypt. Chazar v'shena'ah lahem. He went back and reviewed with them, taught them once again in Arvot Moav. So the plains of Moab. So what we're being told is that this is exactly why this book is called Deuteronomy, why it's called sometimes Mishneh Torah, the going over the second Torah. Okay, let's find the place here. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Let's go back. Here we should have the place right here. Right, there we are. Be'ever HaYarden, on the other side of the Jordan, Bagai Mul Beit Peor, in the valley opposite Beit Peor, Be'eretz Sichon, in the land of Sichon Melech HaEmori, the king of the Amorites, Asher Yoshev BeCheshbon, who dwelt in Cheshbon, Asher Hikam Moshe, whom Moses had smitten, Uvnei Israel, and the children of Israel, B'tzeitam Mitzrayim, when they left Egypt. And just to review for a moment where we're talking about. They're the plains of Moab. See that? And look, there's Heshbon right there. So just to point out that when they were attacked by Sichon, right? They not only were attacked by Sichon, by the way, these are the battles that they had, right? So this is up here. This is Og, where they defeated Og at Edrei, Bashan. Do you see this? It's if you go to Israel today, I mean these these areas have not changed their names, and right up here is Mount Hermon, right? That if you've ever been to Israel and you've been up north and you've seen Mount Hermon, that if you go around the wintertime, you will see actually snow on its peak. It's a very impressive mountain. So this is Bashan, and Gilead is up here. Look at its relationship to the Sea of Galilee. And on the other hand, the plains of Moab are very close to the Dead Sea, as you can see here. Okay. So let's see, and I'm sorry that it's a little bit blurry. Here's the Arnon River right here. Okay. But just to show you what some of the places that we're talking about. Okay. Let's keep going. Vayeshu et arzo, they inherited his land. Ve'et Eretz Og, and the land of Og, Melech HaBashan, the king of Bashan, Shnei Malchei Omori, the two Amorite kings, Asher Be'ever HaYarden, that are on the other side of the Jordan, Mizrach Shamash, in the direction of the east. Rashi, Asher Be'ever HaYarden. So he's explaining these are on the other side of the Jordan, Shehu B'Mizrach, which would be on the east, Sheha Ever Hasheni Haya B'Ma'arav, because the other side of the Jordan was on the west side. That's the way the River Jordan divides, goes from north to south, and of course divides east from west. Okay, let's find the place. Okay. Me'aroer asher al sfat nachal Arnon. So I showed you where the river, or the Wadi Arnon, is from Aroer, which is on the banks of the river Arnon. The Ad Har Sion, up until Har Sion, Mount Sion, Hu Hermon. So Sion and Hermon, these are all the same names, synonyms for Mount Hermon, and sometimes it's known as Snir. And the word Syria, right? The land Syria is also based, I believe, on Mount Hermon, on one of the names of Mount Hermon. It's just such an impressive geographical location. And of course, Lebanon, from the word white, it also was at one point a part of Syria. And what happened was, I believe it was the Sykes-Picot Agreement, I understand, between France and England that cut that off from Syria and created its own country, Lebanon. V'chol ha'arav, that's of course in modern times. V'chol ha'arava, the entire wilderness, Ever HaYarden, on the other side of the Jordan, Mizracha, towards the east. V'ad Yam ha'arava, to the sea of the Arava, which would have been the Dead Sea, Tachat Ashdod HaPiska, below Ashdod HaPiska. Let's see if I have that particular location. Let's see here, because we're talking.
Rabbi, in
Yes,
Psalm 29, I think it's 29, and it goes, Levanon v'Sirion.
yes.
So they were separate countries then.
Okay. I don't think they were separate countries, though. I'm trying to see, but
Oh,
because there's only
because
one mountain then. I mean, it is talking about the two, and still you understand it could mean they're the same place, and they're just simply, because it's poetry, they're using a synonym. I still think it's the same place. Here's Avel Shittim over there, right there. Okay. And I'm trying to see if there's any other areas here. Okay. All right. But yes, I understand why you might think that. But of course, it's in one of the Psalms, and I believe that's the poetry. And it says elsewhere, we read this before, how the different nations referred to Mount Hermon as with different words, with different names. Let's find the place. Okay. Right, so there we below Ashdod HaPiskah. Vayikra Moshe el Kol Yisrael. Moses summoned or called all of Israel. Vayomar Alehem, and he said to them, Shema Yisrael, listen, O Israel, et hachukim, the decrees, ve'et hamishpatim, and the laws, asher anochi dover ba'osnechem hayom, which I am speaking in your ears literally today, ulemadatem otam, and you shall learn them, v'shmartem lasotam, and you shall observe them, you shall guard them in order to practice them. Right? This idea of actually putting into practice, to listen, to really, I think, really to live fully, to live mindfully, and to do these things in a mindful kind of way. Adonai Eloheinu, the Lord our God, Karat imanu brit b'chorev. He established a covenant with us in Chorev. Lo et avotenu karat Hashem et habrit azot. Not with our forefathers did the Lord establish this commandment. Ki itanu, but us, anachnu, we, ele po hayom, those who are here today, kulanu hayim, all of us who are alive. Let's take a look at the Rashi and then I'll comment a little bit. Lo et avotenu. So it says, not with our forefathers. Well, we shouldn't think he didn't. I mean, he did obviously establish a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but he says, bilvad. In other words, Rashi sort of runs this up, puts in a word. Not with our ancestors or our forefathers alone did the Lord establish this covenant. Ki itanu, but with us as well. So the point that Moses is trying to make is that we should not see this, and this is a theme that is mentioned in a number of places, because of course it's so tempting to see this material as atavistic, which I think would apply, saying it's sort of out of date and doesn't apply to us, and we can kind of look at it from a distance. And you can see how Moses is trying to implore the people at his time. But from a literary point of view, I really believe the idea is that it is us as well, that Moses is speaking across the millennia to us today, saying this stuff is serious. It's something we really need to practice. And of course, we know that for many, many centuries up until this time, there certainly are members of the Jewish people who do look at this like this. And I try myself to try and look at it that way as well. And that's the idea. The idea is to internalize as much as possible these concepts that are being shared with us and to try to apply them from my perspective in a Torah chesed, in a Torah of kindness. That's what we're talking about. And he goes on to say what he wants to say. You'll see, to prove his point. Okay. Panim befanim, face to face, diber Hashem imachem. The Lord spoke to you, bahar, on the mountain or from the mountain, mitoch ha'esh, from the midst of the fire. So in other words, he's saying, you should remember this is what happened back there at Mount Sinai. Anochi omed ben Hashem uveinechem. I was standing between the Lord and between you. Ba'et hahi, at that time, lahagid lachem et dvar Hashem, to tell you, to recount to you the word of Hashem, ki yireitem mipnei ha'esh, because you are afraid on account of the fire, v'lo alitem bahar lemor, and you did not go up onto the mountain, saying. And this saying, of course, Rashi's going to tell us, refers all the way back. So let's take a look at this. Okay, panim b'panim, face to face. Amar Rabbi Berechia, said Rabbi Berechia, Kach Amar Moshe, this is what Moses was saying. Al tomru alai, do not say to me, mita'eh etchem, okay, olo tamru, I'm going to put a comma there, ani mita'eh etchem, right? Do not say that I am misleading you. Alor diber, regarding stuff he did not say, stuff that God did not say. Kederet shahasir sur oseh bein hamocher lelokeach. Just as the agent sometimes changes a little bit exactly what the seller is trying to say to the buyer. He acts as an intermediary, and sometimes in order to try and process the deal or sweeten the deal, he may say some things that the seller hasn't said, but as I assume, given him permission to say, right? Indeed, the seller himself was speaking to you. Going on. Anochi omed bein Hashem uveinechem ba'et hahi. At that time, I stood between Hashem and between you. Okay, right. So we said this, and I'm going to do the Rashi. Lemor. So this lost lemor here, right there. Musav al Devar Hashem Diber Hashem imachem. That lemor actually goes all the way back to Diber Lach. I think it's going to be right back here, actually. So it's some sentences back, right? Let's find out. Look here. Diber Hashem imachem. The Lord spoke to you those words there. And then it goes on, lemor, say. I think that is it for the Rashi. Yes. Okay. Right. Let's say a little bit more. Bahar mitoch ha'esh, from the mountain, from the midst of the fire, lemor, to say, etc. Anochi Hashem, I am the Lord, etc. Anochi omed ben Hashem uvenechem, and I was standing between Hashem and between you. Okay, going on. And of course, now we have the statement of the Ten Commandments parallel to the statement in Exodus, so that we have the actual Ten Commandments, the words of the Ten Commandments, twice. Once in Exodus, chapter 20, and once here in Deuteronomy in chapter 5. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord, or I, the Lord your God, Asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out of the land of Egypt, mi beit avadim, from the house of bondage. Lo yelecha Elohim acherim al panai, you shall have no other gods before me. Al panai, before me, bechol makom asher ani sham, meaning in any place where I am present. V'zeh, and this, of course, kol ha'olam, refers to the entire universe, the entire world. Davar acher, another interpretation of al panai, kol zman shani kayam, as long as I exist. Aseret hadibrot kvar pirashtim, and Rashi goes on to say, I've already given explanations regarding the Ten Commandments, the words of the Ten Commandments themselves. Okay. Let's go on. Make sure I've got everything covered. Okay. Lo ta'aseh.
What does
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Judith? Yes? I can't hear you now. Maybe I've lost you. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Not there.
No. Okay. All right. Hopefully she'll be back. Lo ta'aseh lacha fesel kol tmuna. You shall not make an image, a statue or any depiction, asher b'shamayim imal, of anything that is in the heavens above, v'asher ba'aretz mitachat, or on the earth below, v'asher b'mayim mitachat la'aretz, or that is in the water below the earth. Just want to make sure. Okay. Lo tishtachaveh lahem, you shall not prostrate yourself to them, you shall not bow down to them, v'lo ta'avdem, and you shall not serve them, ki anochi Hashem Elokecha, for I, the Lord your God, El Kana, I am a jealous God. I've explained that before. Poked avon avot abanim, who visits the iniquity of the fathers on the sons, v'al shileshim v'al ribeim, on the third and fourth generations, to the lisonai, to those who hate me, v'oseh chesed lalafim, but who performs kindness to thousands, lo'ohavai, to those who love me, u'leshomrei mitzvotai, and those who guard my commandments. And I realize that, of course, this issue of the sons and to the second and third or third and fourth generations have to take the responsibility or the consequences of their parents' actions. I think the point is this, that we're trying to compare the level of kindness with which God deals with the world. So a matter of 4 to 1,000, right? That's what we're talking about, a ratio of 4 to 1,000 or 1 to 250, and saying that God is, if we were to put a number to it, 250 times as kind. That's one point. Number two, if we are aware that our misbehavior is going to affect our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, then there's a possibility that we will think twice before we do these things. Whereas if we only felt we were the ones who had to bear the consequences, we might not care so much. So it's a way of saying, don't think your behavior just affects you. It affects your family in a deep kind of way. Judith, I see you're back. Do you have the question in mind? Just if you can, raise your hand and I will certainly be glad to acknowledge you. So going on. Okay. Lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha lashav. You shall not literally means carry the name of the Lord your God in vain, in vain. We understand what this means. It means, and unfortunately, it's something that we're very tempted to do, which is when you say, "Oh God," or something like that. And that, I believe, is what they're referring to here. Okay, although we're fortunate that basically if it affects one of the holy names of God that are only in Hebrew, then at least it gives us a break. But it's basically saying we should be careful about using God's name in this casual kind of way. Going on to say, for the Lord will not clear the one who takes his name in vain. Again, it sounds very, of course, very severe, but again, primarily, I think because it's so easy to fall into that trap, and that's the reason why it is that severe, to try and again to push us to be a little bit more mindful about these things. Shamor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho. Okay, so guard the day of the Sabbath to make it holy. Kasher tzivcha Hashem Elokecha, just as the Lord your God commanded you. And Rashi is going to jump on this. Why? Shamor, because this word shamor, uvarishonot, but in that previous version in Exodus, hu omer zachor. It says zachor. It doesn't say shamor at Yom HaShabbat in Exodus. It says zachor, and here it says shamor. And remembering and guarding are two different things, right? But he says shnehem b'dibur echad. God said both of these words in one statement. He meant both of these concepts in one statement. Uveteva achat ne'emaru. They were said with one word. Ushmi'u achat nishma'u, and they were heard in this one way, at this one particular moment. Kasher tzivcha, just as he commanded you. Well, where did he command you? Kodem matam Torah b'Mara. He commanded this before the Torah was given at Mara, at the place called Mara. And of course, we're going to go a little bit more detail into the Shabbat. Sheshet yamim ta'avod, you shall labor for 6 days, v'asita kol melachtecha, and perform all your labors, all your work. V'yom hashvi'i shavat l'Hashem Elokecha, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Lo ta'aseh kol melacha, you shall not perform any labor. Ata uvincha uvitecha, you, your son or your daughter, v'avdacha v'amatecha, your servant and your maidservant, v'shurcha v'chamorcha, and your ox and your donkey, v'chol behemtecha, and all your cattle, v'gercha asher b'sharecha, and the stranger who is living with you, in other words, the non-Jew who's living with you, it would seem, although we understand ger as a proselyte, as someone who is interested and desires to take on Judaism. Leman yanuch avdecha, in order that your servant, va'amatcha, and your maidservant should rest kamocha, as you do, as you do. So that's, I think, for today where we're going to stop. And let me mark the place. And we will meet next time and finish this up. So I'm going to stop the share and we're going to stop. Any comments before I stop the recording for the record? Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I kept getting started.
I know. Yeah.
Is there a mention? Why do you think there's no mention in the text? Maybe it's just the context that this is the second time of Aseret HaDibrot and that the word.
Yeah. Okay, so it could be that when he says, which I told you when you came out of Egypt, and how Rashi explains that sentence, and how Moses is saying to them, I'm going over what I told you back then. In other words, just as you got the Ten Commandments back then, I'm going to go review them right now. So there is that concept of reviewing. The other point that I know I wanted to mention is it doesn't say your wife, doesn't say that. And I think that that's significant because, of course, it isn't suggesting for 1 second that your wife is supposed to work on Shabbat. I don't believe that at all. Okay. I believe that one's wife is also included. But the fact that it doesn't mention your wife, I think, is to make us understand that we need to look at ourselves if we're married and if possible to know that our wife is like ourselves. And in fact, there are statements within the rabbinic material that say that ishto, I think the statement in Hebrew is ishto kagufo, which means that we need to really be united and really be together and act in a single kind of way when we're married. And we should look at our partners as being extensions of ourselves. And if that's the case, there would be no need to mention one's wife in this particular statement. And I think that's something very important to think about, to see if it's possible to act in that kind of way, that to be that considerate. And with that, unless you want to comment on that, I am going to stop the recording.